Key characteristics though for participation is you need to have some discretionary demand. Okay, you need to have the ability, you need to understand your business well enough so that you know that when the button is pushed, you receive the signal, you can do something to respond. So if that's turning on standby generation, reducing your pumping requirements for a while, you need to understand your business well enough. You need to have this time of use electricity meter so we can measure your response. That's fairly important. And you need to be able to get access to it, because that's another big thing. And what we've found during beta test is some organisations haven't been able to get access to their meter data. So that's part of beta test, is understanding how do we deal with that? Are there commercial arrangements that we need to put in place with the meter owner, or do we have to put in parallel metering? You know, it's understanding that sort of stuff. The other thing you're going to need to do is contract with us. You're going to need to participate in our tender. So the RFP is going to be released today, this afternoon. You're going to need to respond to that tender if you want to participate as a curtailment service provider. The biggest thing, for me at least anyway, is we want people who are willing to make it happen. Okay, we want people who want to help us make demand response happen in New Zealand. Okay, this is one of the big things we've seen so far is innovation. In such a short time, we've seen lots of stuff innovated in the very short time that we've been looking at demand response in New Zealand. Really encouraging. That's the sort of stuff we want to see here. I mean, there's no point in coming along and saying, oh, I know it's all too hard and you know, the price is way too high, I don't know why you're doing this. We need people involved who are keen to make this happen. You're going to need at least the internet. Hopefully most people have the internet. Post-event measurement and verification. So you're going to need the ability to get your meter data. We've spoken about that. And you know, you're also going to need to have a connection to our demand response management system. So Siobhan mentioned our demand response management system. It's called DR BizNet. And it's got three main areas of functionality. And we won't dwell on this for too long, but the three main areas are registration. So that's where you tell us who you are, all the locations that you're using, what their capabilities are, you know, so how much generation, how much lighting, how much heating and cooling. So we know where you are, what you're capable of. It's also used for event management. So this is how we create our event schedules. This is how we communicate events to you, and you signal your availability back to us. And it's also used to measure and verify your response. So at the end of an event, you'll send your meter data back to us, and we measure and verify your response based on a bunch of pre-packaged methodologies that we can use. So those methodologies are well developed based on international jurisdictions. And I've just thrown a couple of screenshots in here of the demand response management system. Not the prettiest system in the world, but it's very functional. It does the job. And as I mentioned before, the discussions that we've had with our beta test participants indicate that it's definitely a doable, usable system. It's helping break down some of those barriers for participation. And another one, this is just one of the screens that we use to create an event where we can identify areas on the grid that we'd like to use in our demand response event. So let's have a look at our RFP. We'll go through a little bit of the services that we're looking after from you. There's a bunch of response forms, so you know the type of information we're going to be looking for from you. There are a bunch of terms and conditions that are attached to a standard contract. And for those of you who haven't responded to a Transpower RFP, this is probably not a big deal to you, but for those of you who have, you'll be pleasantly surprised because it's slimmed down. It's, we've tried to make it easier for people to get involved in this process. We're going to deliver you 100 megawatts of demand response. So that's what we're looking for here. And we want to get a mix. We want a bit of diversity. You'll be dealing directly with Transpower. So the contract will be with us. You don't have to be a market participant. And there'll be two types of market structure that we'll use. One is called, we've called it a security program, and the other one is an economic program. So the security program is what we would typically use in a non-transmission solution. So this is where we need a guaranteed response. So if you promise you're going to be there with 1 megawatt of demand response, you need to be there when we call you. So it's a firm commitment from you for a specified block of demand response. One of the big things here is that you'll be notified at least 2.5 hours in advance. The other structure that we're going to look at is an economic program. So this is different. This is where you don't need to promise to us that you're going to deliver for X dollars. You know, participation in an economic event is voluntary. So we will send out a price signal at least 2.5 hours in advance. So it'll be something like, look, I've got $1,000 a megawatt hour from 4 till 6 p.m. in Auckland. Who's in? And CSPs will respond and say, yep, I'm in for half a meg. You know, it's essentially building a stack of responses from CSPs. These two things are designed to understand, okay, what sort of price are we expected to get back? That's the primary goal, is to understand price point. But there are a bunch of other things. Okay, what if we get more than what we need? What do we do? What sort of processes do we need to put in place to manage that? We want to understand how demand response works with interruptible load. So if you're in the reserves market, how do you participate in what we're doing as well? We don't want to rule you out, but you can't do both at the same time with the same resources. So if you're called for the reserves market for interruptible load, you can't be called for our demand response program at the same time with the same resource. It's not going to work. Physically, you can only turn off 1 megawatt of load. You can't call that same 1 megawatt twice at the same time. We want to know how that's going to work. AUFLs, automatic under-frequency load shedding. That's an important part of the power system. We can't afford to compromise that, so we need to understand how this is going to work. So there's going to be a communication with the lines company. So in the North Island at the moment, lines companies are obliged to provide AUFLs. So when you as a CSP register a location as part of your demand response program, it'll have an ICP attached to it. So that's your unique identifier for each location. That ICP will belong to a lines company. The lines company will know exactly where that is. So a notification gets sent when you register an ICP. A notification gets sent to the local lines company, and the lines company will identify that ICP and figure out whether or not it's on an AUFLs feeder. If it's on an AUFLs feeder, they will need to do something about it. So whether it means they need to go and look for some more resource to replace that stuff that you've just signed up, or whether they just say, look, that's fine, it's not really going to impact us too much. We need to understand what processes need to be put in place to help lines companies manage their AUFLs obligations, and for Transpower as well, and the industry as a whole. Right, so what do we want from you? We want to understand the value of demand response. So by that I mean, okay, how much is it worth to you? How much can we buy your 1 megawatt of demand response under a bunch of different scenarios? So, you know, if we call you today, you know, for 2 hours in the afternoon, and then tomorrow for 2 hours, and then the day after for 2 hours, and the day after that, are you still going to be there? Is it worth that much to you? I mean, or can we double the price and keep you in the game? You know, what's it worth to you? Because we need to understand that. And we just mentioned that, a bunch of coordination and communication that's required between us and everybody who's participating in demand response. And there's a massive long supply chain in demand response, not just those primary players being Transpower, curtailment service provider, and the consumer. You know, there are technology vendors out there. There's the lines company who needs to understand. There's retailers who may need to understand what's going on. There's the system operator. There is the market operator. There's a bunch of organisations who are probably going to need to have some sort of information flow communicated through to them. The ultimate goal here is to remove barriers, right? We want to make it easier for participation. So if you can see anything that's stopping you from participating, or making it difficult to participate, or raising the cost of participation, let us know. A good example might be, oh look, I can't get access to my meter data because I don't know who owns it, can't talk to them. If I do know them, we need to do something about that. And it's good to have the EA here because they need to understand stuff like that because that's their area of expertise. We're putting this as a non-transmission solution. We're putting it in to help us manage demand response so that we can get a little bit more life out of our existing assets. That's our primary focus right now. But we're putting in the system in a way that we can make it flexible so it can be used by other organisations for lots of different purposes. So sure, I'm pretty sure we'll be keen to make it available to lines companies to help manage their local network a little bit better, because through this process we're going to be uncovering lots of new load that they don't already know about, that they don't already have any relationship with. This system will be fairly flexible so that they can use it. Retailers could use it. Buying, aggregation groups could use it to help manage risk a bit better. So absolutely, we want to make this available. In theory, we could put this platform in, well, we've put it in. As it is, we could use it to provide outsourced services to Western Australia to help them manage their capacity market, the reserves market over there. We could do it. Yeah, but we could help them manage their market using the same platform. It's just, it's a fairly flexible system, and we have that in mind in longer term. But right now our focus is on putting it in as a non-transmission solution. So this is what we're looking for. And diversity, I guess, sums it all up. We want lots of different participants, lots of different types of load, different sizes, and ultimately its value. Because if it doesn't come in economic, it is not going to work, and that has got to be a clear message to people. And I'm not going to say this is what your price should be, because that's not how it's going to work. You tell us what you think it's going to cost, what the value is to you, and then we'll take it from there. But it's got to be economic. We want people and organisations involved who want to make it happen. We want people who are keen, who are excited about making this happen for New Zealand. It's not just about making it happen for Transpower. As I mentioned before, we're putting in something in place where a bunch of products, services and markets can be developed over these fundamental building blocks. So we'll select people who respond, or organisations who respond to our RFP. We'll select them based on their ability, or the mix of them, to meet our goals. So here's our timeline. The RFP will be released later on today. So it'll be released on GETS. Everybody who's attended today will receive an email with all the information about the RFP. It'll be released on our website. Confirmation of interest, it's 5 days. It's a pretty compressed time frame, but hey, we want to move. We want to keep moving with this. And then we've got responses due by the 17th of May. So in order to get your responses to us by the 17th of May, you don't need to have, if you're going to sign, if you're a third-party curtailment service provider, you don't need to have your individual ICPs signed on the dotted line in blood today. Okay, so when our market pilot commences in June, we will take whoever's registered, whoever's signed a contract, whoever's there by then, we will start making event calls. As soon as we got the first curtailment service provider signed up, and as more and more people sign contracts with us, more and more people will be receiving calls. But the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. So, if you want to find out more, there's a bunch of information on our website. I'd like to thank you all very much for coming along. This is, as I said before, a very exciting project for Transpower. We need your keenness, your willingness, and everybody's participation to make this happen.